You know, there's a specific kind of scream that changes a man's DNA. It's not the yelp of a kid scraping a knee or the dramatic shriek of a teenager seeing a spider. No, this was primal, a jagged tear in the fabric of a quiet Tuesday afternoon that hit my eardrums and went straight to the reptile part of my brain that's been dormant since I hung up my uniform 6 years ago. I was out by the barn, just greasing the axle on the old tractor, the smell of hydraulic fluid and pine needles thick in the air, typical Montana silence, when I heard it, Dad. Followed by a muffled, desperate noise that sounded like a hand clamping over a mouth. I didn't think, I didn't breathe, I just moved, the heavy wrench still gripped in my hand like a club, my boots tearing up the gravel as I sprinted toward the perimeter fence where my 16-year-old daughter, Maya, had gone to check the mail, and let me tell you, 50 yards never felt so long or so short at the same time. I burst through the line of aspens and saw them, a white SUV with no plates idling by the county road, and two guys, big guys, dressed in these high-visibility vests that looked official until you really looked at them, dragging Maya toward the open back door while she kicked and twisted like a wildcat. One of them, a guy with a buzz cut and eyes that looked dead inside, had her wrist in a grip that I knew was going to leave bruises, and that sight, seeing a stranger's hands on my little girl, it flipped a switch in me that I thought I'd welded shut after my last tour in Afghanistan. I didn't shout, I didn't warn them, I just hit the gravel road with the momentum of a freight train, the wrench raised, and the second guy, the driver, a nervous-looking fellow with a clipboard, saw me and his eyes went wide, shouting something about compliance officers, but I was already there. I swung the wrench, not to kill, but to break the air, slamming it into the side panel of their SUV with a sound like a gunshot, metal crumpling, glass shattering, and the noise froze them just long enough for me to step into the bubble. "Let her go," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine, it sounded like grinding rocks, low and terrible, the kind of voice you use when negotiation is off the table and violence is the only language left in the room. The big guy holding Maya hesitated, trying to size me up, looking at my grease-stained t-shirt and thinking maybe I was just some hillbilly farmer he could intimidate, so he puffs out his chest and flashes a badge that looked like it came out of a cereal box, shining in the sun. "Sir, back off," he barked, trying to sound authoritative but missing the mark by a mile. "We are authorized agents of the Bitterroot Community Standards Board. Your daughter is being detained for multiple environmental infractions and trespassing on protected easement zones." I looked at the badge, then I looked at his boots, clean, cheap, mall cop sneakers, not the rugged tactical gear a real operator would wear in this terrain, and I laughed, a cold, sharp bark of a laugh that made Maya look at me with wide, terrified eyes because she'd never seen her dad look like a predator before. "There is no community standards board," I told him, stepping closer, invading his personal space until I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "This is unincorporated land, private property, and the only law out here is the sheriff and me, and the sheriff is 40 minutes away, so you do the math on who you should be worried about." The driver, the nervous one, started reaching for something under his jacket, maybe a taser, maybe a gun, and that was his mistake because my instincts, honed by 20 years of force recon training, took over before my brain could even process the threat. I dropped the wrench and snapped my hand out, catching his wrist in a lock that bent the joint back just far enough to make him yelp, forcing him to drop a canister of pepper spray, and I shoved him back against the hood of their dented SUV hard enough to knock the wind out of him. "Get in the car," I whispered to Maya, not taking my eyes off the big guy who was still holding her arm, now. Maya scrambled behind me, shaking, sobbing, but safe, and now it was just me and the big guy, and I could see the calculation running behind his eyes. He was realizing that this wasn't the easy snatch and grab they had planned, that they had walked into a lion's den thinking it was a petting zoo. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Stone," the big guy said, and the fact that he knew my name, that he knew exactly who I was, sent a chill down my spine that was colder than the winter wind, because that meant this wasn't random, this was targeted, this was homework. "The mistake," I said, picking up my wrench again and tapping it rhythmically against my palm, "was thinking you could touch my family and drive away with your teeth. Now get in that van and vanish, because if I see you again, I won't aim for the fender." They scrambled, tripping over themselves to get back into the vehicle, tires spinning in the loose gravel as they peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust and the smell of burning rubber, and as I watched them disappear around the bend, I realized my hands were shaking. not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump of holding back, of not doing what I really wanted to do to them. I turned to Maya, expecting her to be falling apart, but she was standing there, pale face streaked with tears, holding a thick leather binder that had fallen out of the driver's jacket during the scuffle. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling but angry, "look at this." We opened the binder right there on the side of the road, and what I saw made the blood freeze in my veins. It was a dossier, thick and detailed, with photos of our ranch taken from the tree line, timestamps of when I went into town for supplies, detailed notes on Maya's school bus schedule, and worst of all, a fake legal document titled Involuntary Wardship and Asset Seizure Protocol, with our address printed at the top. This wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a heist, a sophisticated, terrifyingly bureaucratic attempt to steal my land and my daughter using the guise of fake authority, and as I flipped through the pages, seeing the logos of a company called Vane Heritage Solutions, I realized we were dealing with something way bigger than two thugs in a rental car. I hustled Maya back to the house, locked every door, pulled the shades, and went to the gun safe in the study, spinning the dial with fingers that felt numb, knowing that the quiet life I had built for us since my wife passed away was officially over. "Pack a bag," I told Maya, "just the essentials, we're going to lockdown mode," and while she ran upstairs, I pulled out my satellite phone, the one I kept for emergencies when the cell towers were down or when the world went sideways, and I dialed a number I hadn't called in 4 years. "Dutch," I said when the line clicked open, skipping the pleasantries, "it's Cal, I need you in Sledge, and I need you yesterday, we've got hostiles on the perimeter and they're using paper trails as camouflage." Dutch didn't ask questions, he never did, he just asked for coordinates and told me Sledge was already loading the truck, because that's what brotherhood is, it's not Christmas cards, it's showing up when the wolf is at the door. While I waited for them, I sat at the kitchen table with that binder, poring over the documents, and the more I read, the sicker I felt. This vain woman, whoever she was, she had a system, target single parents, veterans, people living off the grid, hit them with fake fines, fabricated violations, and threatened to take their kids into protective custody unless they signed over their property rights or paid massive settlements. It was genius, in a twisted, evil way, preying on people who naturally distrusted the government, using that distrust to isolate them, making them think the law was coming for them so they wouldn't call the actual police until it was too late. But they had miscalculated one thing, one very big, very dangerous variable. They didn't know that Caleb Stone doesn't negotiate with terrorists, whether they wear suicide vests or Italian suits. By the time Dutch and Sledge rolled up the driveway in their beat-up Bronco, the sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the valley, and seeing those two ugly mugs was the best thing I'd seen all day. Dutch, skinny, bespectacled, looking more like an accountant than a cyber warfare specialist, immediately set up a laptop on my dining table, while Sledge, a man built like a vending machine with a beard to match, just cracked his knuckles and asked, "Who are we hurting, Cal?" "We need to know who Julianne Vane is," I said, tossing the binder onto the table, "and we need to know where she's operating from, because she sent 2 clowns to take Maya today, and they're going to come back with a circus." Dutch's fingers flew across the keyboard, hacking into public records, cross-referencing the shell companies listed in the binder, and within 20 minutes, his face went grim. "It's worse than you thought, Cal," Dutch muttered, spinning the screen around. "Julianne Vane is a disbarred real estate attorney from Chicago. She's been running this community compliance scam in 3 states, targeting rural communities that are gentrifying. She forces the locals out with fake fines and threats, seizes the land, and flips it to developers for millions." He pulled up a map, red dots appearing all over the valley. "She's not just after you, she's hitting the Millers down the road, the old Henderson place, she's building a portfolio, and she's using these hired goons to terrorize anyone who fights back." "They tried to take Maya," I said, the words heavy in the room. "They weren't just going to find me, they were going to leverage her to get the deed." Sledge stopped cleaning his rifle and looked up, his eyes dark. "So we go to them," Sledge said, "we kick down the door, we explain the error of their ways." "No," I said, a plan forming in my head, a plan that relied on their arrogance, on their belief that I was just a dumb grunt who would panic. "If we attack, they scatter, they lawyer up, they disappear and pop up in another county to hurt someone else's kid. we need to catch them in the act, we need to expose them so hard they can't crawl out from under the rock. Maya walked into the room then, holding a mug of tea, looking small but standing tall, and she looked at the map, then at me. "They're coming back, aren't they?" she asked, her voice steady. "They have to," I admitted. "They failed today, which makes them look weak, and predators hate looking weak, plus, now they know we have their playbook." "Use me," Maya said, and the room went silent, even Sledge looked uncomfortable. "No," I said immediately, "absolutely not." "Dad, think about it," she argued, stepping forward, showing that stubborn streak she got from her mother. "If they come back, they're going to come heavy, they're going to expect you to be guarding the house, guarding the perimeter, they won't expect me to be out there, visible, looking vulnerable." "It's too dangerous," Dutch said, adjusting his glasses, "we can't risk it." "I'm the only bait they care about," she insisted. "If you want to catch the woman running this, you have to give her what she wants, you have to make her think she's won." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't a child anymore, she was a survivor, and she was right, these people were arrogant, and arrogance was the chink in the armor we needed to exploit. "Okay," I said, feeling like I was swallowing glass, "but we do it my way, on our ground, and you are never, not for 1 second, out of our sight." We spent the night prepping the property, turning the ranch into a kill box, not with claymores and tripwires, but with cameras, microphones, and strategic positions that would give us legal cover and tactical superiority. Dutch hacked into the Vane Heritage Solutions server, don't ask me how, I don't want to know, and sent a message from the burner phone we took off the driver, telling Vane that the package would be unguarded at noon the next day, claiming I had been called into town for a legal meeting about the fines. It was the perfect lure, the dad is distracted by the legal smoke screen, the daughter is home alone. We waited, the morning dragging on like a century, the silence of the mountains heavy with anticipation, until exactly 11:45 a.m., when the drone Dutch had hovering at 3,000 feet pinged our tablets. "Convoy inbound," Dutch whispered, "black SUV, leading a moving truck, they're bringing a moving truck, Cal, they were planning to strip the house too." "Positions," I said into my comms, hiding in the hayloft of the barn with my long-range lens and a rifle I hoped I wouldn't have to use, while Sledge melted into the brush near the driveway and Dutch monitored the feeds from the basement bunker. We watched them roll up to the gate, not the 2 amateurs from yesterday, but a team of 4, wearing tactical black, looking much more serious, and stepping out of the lead vehicle was a woman who radiated icy control, Julianne Vane, in the flesh. She looked around, checking the windows, checking the silence, and smiled, a predatory, satisfied smile that made my trigger finger itch. She gestured to her men, and they produced bolt cutters, snapping the chain on my gate like it was string. "Showtime," I whispered, watching Maya walk out onto the front porch, holding a basket of laundry, acting for all the world like a bored teenager doing chores, putting on the performance of a lifetime. Vane walked up the driveway, heels clicking on the asphalt, her men fanning out, and she called out to Maya, "Hello there, sweetie, your father isn't home, is he?" Maya froze, dropping the basket, playing the part perfectly. "Who are you?" she asked, voice trembling. "I'm from the county," Vane lied smoothly, holding up a fake court order, "we're here to help you pack, the court has decided this environment isn't safe for you anymore." "That's a lie," Maya shouted, backing up toward the door, exactly as "Now," I said, and simultaneously, Sledge triggered the remote deadfall we'd rigged by the main gate, a massive old pine log swinging down on a cable, not to hit anyone, but to slam into the earth right behind their moving truck with a thunderous thud that shook the ground and effectively blocked their only exit. At the exact same second, I squeezed the trigger, and the front tire of Vane's Mercedes exploded, the gunshot echoing off the canyon walls like a cannon blast, sending the 4 men diving for cover behind the porch pillars. "Nobody moves!" I roared, my voice amplified by the PA system Dutch had wired into the barn's eaves, "Drop your weapons and get on the ground, or the next round goes through the engine block." It was chaos down there, controlled chaos for us, absolute panic for them. Vane was screaming orders that nobody was listening to because her hired muscle had just realized they weren't dealing with a helpless girl, they were stuck in a tactical ambush. Maya, bless her brave heart, had already slipped inside the house and locked the reinforced steel door the moment the shooting started, engaging the magnetic locks Dutch had installed. One of the goons, a guy with a scar across his nose, panicked and pulled a pistol, a real pistol, and aimed it at the house. "Gun!" Sledge called out from the bushes, and before I could even reacquire the target, Sledge broke cover, moving like a blur of violence. He didn't shoot, he tackled the guy from the blind side, a 250-pound human missile slamming into the gunman, driving him into the dirt with a bone-jarring crunch. The gun went flying, and the other 3 mercenaries froze, looking at Sledge, who was now standing over their buddy, looking like a bear that had just been woken up from a nap. "I wouldn't," Sledge grunted, cracking his knuckles, "I really wouldn't." Julianne Vane stood there, clutching her designer bag, looking from her disabled car to her neutralized team, and her face twisted from arrogance to pure, unadulterated rage. "You can't do this," she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at the barn. "I have court orders. I have judges on speed dial. I'll own this property by sunset and you'll be in a federal prison." I climbed down the ladder and walked out into the sunlight, my rifle slung over my shoulder, holding the dossier we'd found. "You have nothing," I said, walking right up to the property line where she stood, "except a fake badge, a stack of forged documents, and a severe misunderstanding of who you're dealing with." I tossed the binder at her feet. "We know about the Millers. We know about the Hendersons. We know about the kickbacks to the county clerk to fast-track the foreclosure notices." She laughed, a brittle, nervous sound. "You think you can prove any of that? I'm a consultant. These men are independent contractors. You're just a paranoid veteran waving a gun. By the time my lawyers are done with you, you'll be begging to live in a cardboard box." She was good, I'll give her that, even caught in a trap. She was trying to spin the narrative, trying to use the legal system as a shield. But then Dutch walked out of the house, holding a laptop, with Maya right beside him filming everything on her phone, streaming it live to a private server. "Ms. Vane," Dutch said, his voice calm and analytical, "while you were speechifying, I took the liberty of mirroring your phone when it connected to our local Wi-Fi, which, by the way, is an unsecured honeypot I set up for exactly this purpose." Vane's face went pale, the blood draining out of her cheeks so fast she looked like a ghost. "You illegally accessed my data," she hissed. "Actually," Dutch corrected, pushing his glasses up his nose, "you accepted the terms and service agreement when you auto-connected to free guest Wi-Fi to check your email 5 minutes ago. Section 8, Clause 4 explicitly grants the network administrator right to monitor traffic for security threats. And boy, did we find threats." He turned the screen around. It wasn't just emails, it was a chat log with a contact named The Architect, outlining exactly how they planned to frame me for drug manufacturing if I didn't sell, planting evidence in the barn. It was a smoking gun the size of a howitzer. "This is going to the FBI, the state attorney general, and every news outlet from here to Seattle," I told her, enjoying the way her knees started to wobble. The sound of sirens started to drift up the valley, real sirens this time. I had called the state police, not the local guys, just in case she had friends in town. "You're done," I said, stepping closer, looming over her. "You prey on people who just want to be left alone. You think because we live out here, because we don't wear suits, that we're stupid. That we're weak." I leaned in, my voice dropping to that dangerous whisper again. "But out here, we look out for each other. You didn't just attack a family, you attacked a tribe." The arrest was less dramatic than the takedown but infinitely more satisfying. The state troopers arrived in force, and seeing Vane in handcuffs, screaming about her rights while being shoved into the back of a cruiser, was a sight I'll cherish forever. Her goons rolled on her immediately, trading testimony for plea deals, revealing a network of fraud that spanned 4 counties. But the real ending to this story didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened 2 weeks later, at the town hall meeting in the high school gym. The place was packed, ranchers, veterans, old ladies who baked pies, young families. Word had spread. When Maya and I walked in, the room went quiet, then erupted in applause. It wasn't about heroism, it was about relief. Everyone had been feeling the pressure of these compliance officers, everyone had been scared, but nobody had known how to fight back until we stripped the mask off the monster. I took the microphone, standing center court. "They're gone," I told the crowd. "Vane is looking at 20 years for racketeering and kidnapping. But there will be others." I looked around the room, seeing the faces of my neighbors. They rely on us being isolated. They rely on us not talking to our neighbors because of pride or privacy. That stops now. We start a communication network. We watch each other's fence lines. Next time a black SUV rolls up a driveway where it doesn't belong, 50 of us show up, not just one. The cheers were deafening, but later that night, as I sat on the porch with Maya, watching the stars come out over the ridge, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving a heavy, complicated feeling in my gut. We had won, yes. We were safe, for now. But I looked at my daughter, saw the way she checked the locks twice before coming outside, saw the way she flinched when a coyote howled in the distance. I had protected her, but I had also exposed her to the ugly truth of the world, that there are people who view our lives, our sanctuaries, as just lines on a spreadsheet to be deleted. "Dad," she asked, breaking the silence. "Do you think we went too far? With the trap? The guns?" I took a sip of my coffee, thinking about that question. Thinking about Vane's face when she realized she was caught. Thinking about the pistol sledge knocked out of that guy's hand. In a civilized world, maybe we did go too far. Maybe we should have waited for the police, filed reports, hoped the system worked. But looking at the bruise fading on Maya's wrist, I knew the answer. "The world is full of wolves, Maya," I said softly. "And sometimes, the only way to keep the sheep safe isn't to build a higher fence. It's to show the wolves that there's something in the pasture with bigger teeth in them." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there in the dark, two survivors on a mountain. I know some people will say I'm a vigilante, that I took the law into my own hands, that setting a trap like that is illegal or immoral. Maybe they're right. But when I look at my daughter, safe and sound, I don't feel guilty. I just feel ready for the next time. Because there's always a next time. So, tell me, if two men grabbed your child and flashed a fake badge, would you wait for a lawyer? Or would you pick up the wrench? Let me know in the comments, because out here on the ridge, we already know our answer. Stay safe, watch your six, and never, ever stop fighting for what's yours.